everybody. Can you hear me, guys? Hear me okay? So the purpose of today is I really want to speak to you guys about how important the correlation between nutrition is and your pet's overall wellness. Obviously, like Lori said, I work for Smallbatch, so that's a little disclaimer, I guess. But I am more than happy to answer any questions you guys have regarding any of the foods that you feed or any that you're interested in, so do not hesitate. So right now, as you can see in this beautiful store, there's become a lot of commercial pet foods available on the market, and each one claiming to, be the best to help solve certain health ailments and, solve basically be the food that is perfect for your dog. And it can be very challenging as a consumer now and as a pet owner to figure out just what does my dog need. Is he getting the right balance of nutrition? And if this is ultimately something that is worth spending my money for. And like I said, my goal really is to help you guys figure out what to put in your dog's bowl for longevity and optimal health. So a little bit about me. I've been in the pet industry for about a decade now, and I've worked for rescue groups, so I've fostered personally, about 78 dogs in my own home, and cats included. So, when you take in these stray animals, they oftentimes have a lot of problems, and, I've had to figure out ways to help solve a lot of these issues. I also then went and worked for veterinary offices as well as holistic vet offices, so I've learned a lot about, the problems that we're seeing. And one thing I do want to mention is right now it seems like our pets have a lot of health problems. We're talking about allergies being the number one problem. I'm sure many of us here today probably have an animal with allergies. Hot spots, urinary tract infections with cats, poor dental hygiene, ear infections, things like that, just to name a few. How many of us, just show of hands, have a pet with a health problem that we're hoping to address with food? Yeah, so usually a good amount of us. And it's become very apparent to myself as well as, the people here working at IBPet in this pet industry that nutrition can be really key to reversing these problems. So I hope that, we'll really start to take a look at what we're putting in our dog's bowl every day and taking that into consideration. So I really want to highlight 3 principles of human nutrition that can really apply to our pets. And the first one is variety. It's really important to rotate in new foods, not let your pets eat the same thing day in and day out. It's just like people. You're not going to want to eat cereal every single day. Or even if you love steak and potatoes, you can't eat that every single day for the rest of your life and expect yourself to be perfectly healthy and not have any issues. This is really important for our animals too. It kind of contradicts what we like to think. A lot of us buy this bag of food and we're like, it's complete and balanced, it's the best for my dog, and it's the only thing they can eat, and that's what they're going to get every single day for the rest of their life. And really, I want you guys to kind of open up your minds and think about rotating in different proteins, even different brands of food, maybe within the same category, because it's really important for animals, not just for palatability, but for balance. It's really key to incorporate variety into their diet so that they can achieve balance over time. And then the second is quality. The higher the quality of ingredient, the more nutrition it is for the body. So the same applies for people. If you're eating organic vegetables, it's going to synthesize into your body a lot better than a non-organic, one that has lots of pesticides. And then the third point I want to make is freshness. This is a really key one, and it can be a little challenging because what I mean by freshness is we want foods that are live. less processed foods. Again, this is all principles for human health. If you're eating nothing but Cheerios and Doritos and cup noodles every day, you will have health problems down the line. Sometimes it might not be immediate, but you'll start to see it, and that's the same thing with our pets. And I think those three factors can kind of encompass why we're seeing a lot of these issues happening in pets at a young age now. So what is a raw food diet, and why should we feed raw? A raw food diet, basically, it's a meat-based diet, and it contains not just the muscle meat, but also the bones and the organ, which are really important for our animals. As cute as our pets are, they are their ancestors are wolves, and in the wild they would catch their own prey and devour the whole thing. So really a lot of pet food companies these days, Smallbatch included, have now created commercially prepared raw food diets for you that mimic what they would eat in the wild. So, as you can see at IBPet, they have, I don't know, how many freezers do you guys have now? About 10 freezers, if not more. And so, the understanding is that people are starting to really go back to the basics. This is what our pets are meant to eat. This is what's best for them. And so there has become a huge variety of choices so that we do not have to go buy whole turkeys and grind them ourselves and deal with the mess. It's all done for you and packaged in nice, pretty little bags to make it easy for you. Again, the reason why the raw food industry, and myself included, why I started to feed raw is because it really, truly does solve a lot of health issues that we see day to day in our pets. And sometimes even with behavioral issues. I've heard many stories of cats particularly who have had problems. They're neurotic, they're not using their litter box properly, or they're scratching and biting, but when you start to feed them a raw diet, it completely goes away. And I started to delve into that and really wonder, what about raw could reverse these things? And I'd really like to talk to you guys about a study that happened in the 1940s. It was a well-documented scientific study called the Pottinger's cat study. And what they did with over 900 cats, half of them were fed a raw food diet. The other half were fed cooked foods. And what we started to see in the group that were fed cooked food was that with each generation of kittens born, they started to have health problems. Poor skeletal structure, softer bones, poor eyesight, a lot of allergies, skin parasites. And ultimately, by the third generation, they were no longer able to reproduce. Now that's a big red flag for me, because that tells you that Mother Nature has said, you are so genetically screwed up now that you are not allowed to have any offspring. And yet all the cats who were fed raw continued to reproduce very normally, had very healthy litters. All the kittens were very uniform, and a lot of the health problems started to go away. Then what they did, their next step was they took some of these cooked food cats, about the second or third generation of those cats, and they started to feed them a raw diet. And they noticed that in those cats' lifespan, a lot of problems, skin problems, joint problems, they were able to kind of help heal some of them, but not completely reverse it. But as they started to reproduce, their offspring started to get stronger and stronger.
What is the difference about going into the meat market and buying your meat there, as well as paying that much for it?
Yeah, that's a great question. So her question was, what's the difference between going to the meat market and buying, meat from the butcher versus paying a lot of money for commercially prepared? The first answer would be that it's actually kind of goes hand in hand with her question about bacteria. In pet food, the levels of bacteria acceptable are very, very stringent, and they're very low. In the meat market, it's very high. It's actually close to 30% bacteria. And the reason for that is because it's intended for human consumption. So it's intended to be cooked. So if you are worried about bacteria, buying a commercially prepared one is a lot safer in that sense. But again, you could absolutely go and do that. And go to the meat market and purchase it. But I'll go into kind of like the quality of it, of commercially prepared. Anything else? So basically, what we have all come to realize is that when you begin to feed a pure diet, your animal really starts to become healthy and feel good. And the body's really able to focus more on fighting off some of these ailments like ear infections and skin infections, rather than work so hard to process and digest, the food that we feed them that's overly cooked. Anything else? No questions?
Yeah, but you may go into it.
Yes.
Of course, transitioning your dog to that, and also the age of the dog, does that make a difference? My dog is quite old, and I don't.
That's a great question about the age of your dog. We always say when your dog is a little more into the seniors to be a little more cautious when incorporating a new food. If they've been eating nothing but dry food for their whole life, they may have some problems switching. But I personally had a dog that was 14 years old, and he went straight on to raw, and he just flourished. I mean, he just became like a puppy again, and it was really amazing to see. He limped a lot less. He wasn't scratching, his fur kind of grew back in a little bit better. All these things that I had associated with old age, it almost reversed it.
How long will it take to transition like it does with the new foods? 10 days?
About a week to 10 days. Yes.
Yeah, and I'll just second that. I have a 12-year-old dog, not her,
Yeah.
a 12-year-old dog, and I moved him to raw, and he had always had dry all his life, and I went from dry to grain-free, and then to raw, and he always had very goopy eyes, and his eyes cleared up right away, his ear infections cleared up, and then I was really shocked because about a month later, his hair, his fur, he's also curly, just started coming out in globs, and I was kind of scared, but this incredibly thick coat came in, like the most gorgeous coat he ever had in his life. So I just sort of switched him without transitioning.
Oh, you did without transitioning?
Yeah, really. And he didn't have a problem with it, but some dogs might. But
Mine's 15.
yeah, so it worked for him.
I don't know if you guys all heard her
Oh,
story,
sorry.
but she was basically saying that she had an older dog that was 12 years old, and she just one day decided to switch onto a raw food, and the amount of changes that she saw, clear eyes, his coat came back in, a lot of benefits that every raw feeder really does see when they start to do it. And that kind of segues me into my next point that I wanted to make is that, a lot of times I don't want to say that raw is the miracle of, health cures, but it really does, people every day call us and say, my dog had this issue or had a urinary problem, or we just did surgery and we started to feed raw and it just is amazing. And so, that just really goes to show that nutrition is such a foundation and a building block for health and overall wellness of your pets. And it's so much so that, as you can see right here on this rack behind me, that there has become a myriad of raw alternatives on the market. A lot of foods that are stepping stones to a commercially prepared frozen raw diet. The whole idea behind a lot of these foods here, and I can explain all of those to you, is they're all trying to help you get away from feeding an overly processed, overly cooked, dry bag of food that no longer has a lot of the nutritional value in it, but is convenient and is not as scary or as challenging to incorporate to raw. So I like to say that there's a totem pole of nutrition, and the bottom of the totem pole would be your normal bag of dry kibble. You know, it doesn't really matter which brand it is. I know there's a lot of great ones, and there are differences between each one, and there's definitely some better than others. But essentially, you know, a kibble has a lot of carbs, it has a lot of fillers, a lot of binding agents to make it that dry, you know, form that can sit in your pantry for over a year. If you think about it, what meat can sit in a pantry for over a year? You can't get a piece of steak and put it there. The next level up would be something like a canned food, and then above that would be a dehydrated food. So that also is exposed to heat. That's something like your Honest Kitchen. So it's like a powder, and all you do is add in the water. And then the next would be, you know, your freeze-dried and your air-dried foods. And then up at the top would be your frozen raw food, completely unprocessed, has no fillers, and has never been exposed to heat. So, you know, really I would like you guys to think about where you are on that totem pole and see if you can, you know, take the next step up, take the next leap over to a closer, you know, true raw diet, and you really will see the difference in your pets. Skin and coat will be the most immediate one, brighter eyes, and I have to say at the top of the totem pole, when you reach there, you get less poop, which we all really like. So, you know, a little bit about Smallbatch, which is the raw food company I work for. We're a local California raw food company. So we source all of our ingredients right here in California. The only ingredient outside of California would be rabbit, which comes from Iowa, simply because I'm told there's not enough California rabbits. But I know. But all of our ingredients, we're using free range, no hormone, no antibiotic meats. So a lot of the other raw food companies here do that as well, which is kind of different than what you would get at a butcher. You know, you're not always insured to get organic or no hormone, no antibiotic meats, or you're paying a fortune for it. We also use 100% organic vegetables in all of our formulas, and we don't use any synthetics either. So you're not going to see vitamin packs being added in, because we don't really know what vitamin packs do to our pets and how they're synthesized. A lot of foods, you know, we add those things in to make it quote-unquote complete and balanced so that your dog could eat it every day. But they're not thriving off that diet. You know, it's truly just allowing them to survive, and that's why. So, you know, we really take a lot of pride. We're a really small company. There's only 4 of us. We're family owned and operated at Smallbatch. And we really, you know, took those 3 factors in that I mentioned earlier: variety, freshness, and quality. You know, we're using the best quality ingredients that we can find here. Our chicken's actually 100% certified organic. We use the same chicken that you get at Whole Foods. And as far as variety goes, you know, we created these formulas so that you could rotate them through, you know, each other very easily. So if you buy turkey, you can buy beef next time, and you're not going to have any issues. You're not going to have to worry about transition. And then the freshness factor is a huge thing for us. We, true to our name, make everything in small batches, and then we don't actually make the food until the store orders it. So when they place their order with us, we then make the food, and then it comes straight down here and into the freezer. So, you know, the food that arrives here was made, you know, 2-3 weeks ago. And that's really important for a lot of our pets. I'm sure if any of you guys are cat owners, they are very finicky. And with cats, it's a texture, a temperature, and a freshness factor that gets them to eat the food. And we hear that a lot of cat owners really do well on Smallbatch because of that, the fact that we do make it to order. It's not, you know, collecting frost in the freezer for months and months and months in cold storage. Any other questions? Anything you guys want me to discuss?
Yeah, are you gonna go into all the different types of packages you have there?
Yeah, so, like other raw food companies, we have little sliders, as we call it, or medallions or nuggets. They're in 3-pound bags, and they're little 1-ounce cubes, basically, little 1-ounce meats. And all you have to do is take your commercially prepared raw, throw it in your fridge, let it thaw, overnight or a couple days even, and then you just take it right out and put it into your dog's bowl. So it makes it really easy to portion things out for, if you've got one animal or many.
I have a problem with her because she doesn't like cold food, and I don't want to warm it in the microwave and kill the raw.
Yes.
So what do I do to make
Yes,
it
so the question was that her cat dog does not like cold food. Not all, a lot of dogs, my dog will eat it frozen. She's so excited to eat this. But one little trick that I've done is I actually put it in a glass dish, and I'll pop it into the toaster oven on like a keep warm setting, so it's like 60 to 100 degrees in there, and it'll actually warm the food. I do that for one of the cats, and it will get to room temperature, a little warmer than room temperature, without overly exposing it to heat and cooking out the nutrition. And that's how they like it, because cats want to eat it at a warm, dead body temperature.
Microwave? The microwave
No.
a little bit, no?
We get that question a lot, and we highly recommend you don't microwave the food because there is ground bone in it, and pretty much every single raw here, they all grind the bones into it because that's the best source of calcium for our pets. So if your dog has joint problems or arthritis, really, giving them a raw bone, giving them a raw prepared food is going to be better than any supplement you can buy them.
Like the enzymes in raw and how it's actually easier for animals to digest and things like that.
So, like I mentioned before, when we're feeding a dry food, it's overly processed, it's overly cooked. It actually takes your pets a long time to digest what they're eating. Whereas when you're feeding a raw diet that's unprocessed, it goes right through their system so quickly. My dogs are like on the clock, go to the bathroom 30 minutes after they eat. It comes right out and they're good to go. And so it's kind of nice for my schedule to be able to know that. But raw foods, they're alive. So they have a lot of naturally occurring digestive enzymes. They've got every single amino acid your pets need to, function properly. You're not going to have as many blowouts or diarrhea on raw, especially because the content of bone is in there. So it will help basically harden their poops and naturally express their anal glands as well. So there's a lot of benefits to it. There's naturally occurring pre and probiotics because it's what they're meant to eat. They're able to digest it very easily, very quickly. I always like to use the analogy of people. If you're eating nothing but processed foods and going to McDonald's every day, you're going to have an upset stomach. One way or another. But when you're eating a fresh salad and a fresh piece of, steak, you're not going to have as many issues.
Between the different rabbit and lamb, whatever you have, which is
So
equal
to
in your-
pick the proteins based on your pet,
You want to switch it? Is that what you said?
yeah, you
Switch
can
it?
definitely rotate through. I recommend rotating your pet's diet, even with dry foods. If you're feeding one brand of, chicken and sweet potato, switch it up. Switch to, duck and sweet potato.
I do have a question. When we're transitioning into it, how much of this should we put in and for how long?
So when you're transitioning onto adding raw into their diet, and actually we have a little handout that kind of goes through it in detail, but you just want to incorporate, I would say, incorporate 25% of it into of the new food, and then the next day, cut back on your old and add it in. kind of varies from pet to pet, because my pet, we can switch cold turkey and they're absolutely fine. Yes.
What if you feed your dog both like the all natural crunchies and the raw diet? Like you feed the crunchies throughout the day. Our dog doesn't eat very much as it is. So we leave her crunchies down all day, but they're the like dehydrated crunchies. And then we also feed her the raw frozen patties at dinner time. Like is there any difference?
Yeah, no, you can absolutely, do that. Like I said, incorporating a raw diet into their food is going to be the best thing you can really do for them. If you don't, if the reason why you're leaving dry food out is just because you're worried she's going to get hungry, then you don't need to worry about that.
No, we leave it out because she doesn't eat enough. So we have to like encourage her to eat.
Yeah.
She doesn't eat enough food, so it's like we leave it out. That bowl will sit there for a few days before she'll even touch it. So it's like we just leave it there.
I always recommend that you start by getting them on a feeding schedule. So put the food out in the morning, leave it for 30 minutes, take it away. If they eat it, they eat it. If they don't, try again, at the next meal. And then that way they're on a schedule. I have a dog who's really finicky. She doesn't eat every single meal, and that's okay. It's actually good for your pets to fast and not eat that much. A lot of times too, you know your dog better than anybody else. The back of the bag might say they need 2 cups of food, but she only eats 1. That's okay.
She just we have her on the frozen patties, and she does eat our regular time every night. But I'm
Okay.
just curious, crunches are good too on top of the raw patties.
I always try to say if you can get away from it, the processed foods, the better it's going to be for them. So if you don't have to feed it, just cut it out. And you'll find she'll graze less too. Anything else?
So a while back ago, our dog actually developed a food allergy to, I believe it was science study at the time, to where she actually vomited 20 times. We actually switched her over to Blue Buffalo, but occasionally she would still vomit. So when we switched her to the all raw food diet, we noticed a lot less of it. But we were just wondering if maybe the commercial brand might have developed that allergy.
Yeah, absolutely. Did you guys all hear what he had? So he was saying that his dog had developed some sort of allergy to the science diet, was throwing up 20 times a day, and then they switched to another commercial kibble, and the dog was vomiting still, but a little less until they switched to the frozen raw. And his question was whether or not the kibble had something to do with your dog developing this problem. And absolutely, that's your dog telling you that my body can't handle this overly processed food, and there's no nutrition, or I can't access all the nutrition that I need, and I'm sick, essentially. And we hear that all the time. When you do switch to a frozen raw diet, you will see those problems start to go away, and like I said, it'll start to reverse some of the problems that you have been seeing.
What is the difference between the dehydrated patties and the frozen patties?
Yeah, that's a great question between what the difference is between some of these dehydrated and freeze-dried versus frozen, because a lot of these still are raw foods. Basically, freeze-dried, what they do is they take a frozen raw patty and they freeze-dry it. So it takes all the moisture out. So it's great for when you're traveling. All you have to do is add water to it and wait for it to rehydrate, kind of like an oatmeal. The answer to that would be that, when you rehydrate something like this, and I assume you've done it before, so as you can see, when you rehydrate that, it doesn't look the same as your frozen. When you defrost a frozen diet, you'll see that, there's blood in it, there's a lot of water content, and when you freeze dry something, it is sucking out the blood and a lot of the hemoglobins and the blood cells that they need naturally. As gross as it sounds, because for me, I'm a little irked by blood, but my dogs like blood. It's really, really nutritious for them. And so I always suggest if you are feeding that, feed frozen because it is better for them, and it's also cheaper than feeding a freeze-dried because that's one more process that they have to do to the food. It's an expensive one, to say the least. But it's a great way to, start onto raw if you are kind of like me, where you're a little freaked out by raw meat and the blood and whatnot. But ultimately, you'll find that there's a way to feed this without being grossed out, and once you see how well and how your pets are thriving, you will be sold. Anything else? Yes.
Do you have any suggestions if you have a family of 4 80-pound dogs that you're trying to watch your budget?
Yes.
What was the question?
3 German Shepherds and a Belgian Malinois.
So she's got 4 80-pound dogs.
Yeah, they range between 70 and 85, so on average.
So you got 320 pounds of dog to feed.
Right now, they're all eating a combination of raw and freeze-dried, and it's $7,000
Yes.
a month.
Yes. So obviously, when you are feeding large dogs or multiple animals, it does get expensive. The first thing I want to say is that it's a lot cheaper than when they have to go to the vet. Because I personally had a dog that I had to spend $12,000 at the vet for month after month after month because she had bladder problems. Then she developed allergies to the food that was, her prescription diet. So then we had allergy shots, and we were on a spiral downhill that was just sucking all of the money out of my bank account. And then this is so much cheaper. However, there are ways to try to bring that cost down. If you look in the glass here, we have these 2-pound chubs, and they're just meat, bone, and organ. Those are a little more work on your end because you've got to thaw the whole log out, cut it, portion it, but it does cut your cost down a lot more than some of the patties and the sliders.
Is it not the same as the others? I can't recall.
So the chubs are a little different because they're not they're not supplemented, so you can add in your own supplements. But what I will say is I personally have fed those to my dogs for about 5 years now. Rotated them. As long as you're rotating through protein, incorporating different, incorporating a variety, they will be balanced. They'll achieve balance over time. It's just like people. We don't sit down and eat a balanced meal every single meal. I mean, I had donut for breakfast, So it's always about balance over
What
time.
about adding extra vegetables or squash?
Absolutely.
Stuff like that?
I highly recommend, even if you're feeding a dry food to your dog, go home and grab some, squash, green beans, throw it into your dog's bowls. Incorporate, a variety of foods for them because they will be able to, extract the nutrients that they need. So you don't have to worry so much.
And then one last question related to that. We hear a lot about fasting, like there should be 1 day of fasting every 5 to 7 days of eating. Is that something you suggest?
So that's a little more, I want to say like intermediate pet owner, pet nutrition. But yes, absolutely. Fasting is great for your pets. They don't need to eat every meal. It allows their body to kind of reset itself, cleanse itself, make sure they have a lot of water. But I actually do fast my dogs, even for like 2 days sometimes. It does the body good.
Oh, wow.
About every month, 6 weeks or so. They actually have now learned to tell me when they need it. They'll just kind of stop eating. So, fasting, it really gives the body a break, because they're always working so hard on digesting everything. Like in the wild, they oftentimes catch a prey and they gorge. They eat it all right then and there, and then they're good. They don't need to eat for a couple of days. So helps kind of. There's a lot out there why there are benefits, but I personally just do it because one of my dogs gets a lot of hot spots and it seems to help her. Anything else? scavengers.
Just a link on our, go to our blog, there's a link to a video about it.
So, if you guys have any questions pertaining to your particular animal, I'm more than happy to, come up and ask me. I'm more than happy to help answer them and help you find a food. But we do have samples today of the small batch raw that you can take home, try it out with your own pets. It's also on sale today, right? 20% off. And then we also have these dehydrated jerky treats. So it's just 100% pure meat treats. A great way to incorporate fresh food into their diet as well. It's also important to look at what treats you're feeding your pets too. I do want to mention that because a lot of times we do start to feed a great diet, but our dogs are still having issues, and then we realize, oops, we're feeding a really bad brand of treats that's contributing to issues. So, this could be a great jumping off point, just switching your dog's treats to a healthier alternative, and then adding home veggies into your pet's bowl.
Raw.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Anybody have any kind of stories they want to share about their pet and, an issue they had switching to raw in the past? Go ahead.
Well, one of the dogs that I was talking about, it's a 10-and-a-half-year-old German Shepherd, and he's had colitis, IBD since he was 6 months old, did all the and allergies and all sorts of stuff. I work for a holistic vet, so that helped a lot. I know it's coming out of the medical part, so I used to work with Dr. Miller. But through years of going the traditional route, and then we went the non-traditional route, what's really, really exciting is he's now on a combination of either Smallbatch or Grandma Lucy's, some of the others we rotate. Just 2 years ago, giving him a teaspoon of raw instant diarrhea. I mean, it was so bad. But through supplementation, homeopathy, and getting some good raw food, he's now on completely raw. Has had the best coat ever. Almost all of his colitis is completely gone. It's amazing. And he's 10-and-a-half years old, which shows, that older dogs can, do very well and thrive very well on the raw food. So I can't say enough about raw. You can never go back to anything else.
Yes.
When I tried my dog on it though, she threw it out. So
Yeah, and we can absolutely talk about, incorporating it more slowly into your dog's system. Because some animals, because it's so rich in nutrient packed, that they aren't used to it, so they kind of feast on it and eat it too fast, throw it up, or their body just was a little overloaded. So your dog may be one of the dogs where you kind of have to incorporate it a little slower, just so that they learn to how to properly do it. And also, if you are feeding raw on top of your dry food, that could also be a bit of an issue for them, because the pH levels of both foods are so drastically different that the body, is the stomach acids get a little confused and then they regurgitate.
I've had people tell me that when they first do raw, their dogs are like, and they just inhale it, and then it comes right back up because their body's like, oh, this is different. Maybe even the temperature has something to do with it. Because if your dog swallows a big piece of bone, their body's going to tell them to throw it up if it's too big for them to digest. So it could be something that's to do with that too.
can I put this in the wet food? She's on wet food right now.
Yeah.
And also mangoes and chicken.
Yeah, we can absolutely, help you figure out how much to portion slowly into their diet to help them, do the transition over nicely.
I used to feed my cat, I'm a cat person, Primal.
Okay.
And he did well on it, but then he kind of stopped eating it. How does yours compare to Primal?
So, like I said, the palatability for cats is really important. And the fresh freshness factor of it is important as well. And so because we're local, you know, in California, and we make it to order, you might find that your cat does a little bit better. I actually had a foster cat that wouldn't eat raw. I mean, just wouldn't eat it. And then, you know, finally was able to slowly transition her onto it. And then she was just like, cats can be hard though, because you think they love the lamb, and then tomorrow, no, don't want it. I want chicken.
Do you know of any, like, the slow people? My dog's an alcohol in that poor dog group, and she eats at the crane, like, she just inhales it, it's less than 30 seconds, it's gone. She eats 2 patties each meal. Do you have any suggestions for a type of bowl that I have a slow people and it doesn't slow her down?
And it's so hard for her to get at it because it's a wet food, it's just, yeah. I mean,
You can smush like wet food into a slow pea bowl. You can totally do that. I know that they gotta work at licking it out. I think she's like, I'm eating the bowl. And it's totally she's like, I'm not really used to
She
it.
might eat the bowl.
Wait, there's stainless steel one. Is there? Yeah.
Yeah.
That's funny.
You know, one of my dogs inhales the food so quickly, so I started to actually feed it to them frozen. Kind of make them go outside and take some time doing it. Yeah.
Reminds me of another question too, is what is your thoughts on how often to rotate just from a big bone, like sometimes I'm in the big knuckle bones or turkey necks or something like
Oh,
that?
yeah.
Replacing a meal with
Yes.
those?
So you can absolutely, that's a great point I wanted to make, was that you can buy, you know, bones and use that as a meal replacement. So that might be a great way to try to transition your pet onto raw, and throw them a bone once a week, you know, twice a week. How often do you give your dogs bones?
Once a week at least.
Yeah.
I mean, the only reason why I don't do it more often is because I have toddlers and they're like, oh, mom, look what I found. And I'm like, no.
But yeah, so I actually give my dogs marrow bones about once a week. Anytime I need to get work done, and I just go, okay, outside, go,
It's
have
really
fun.
for their teeth. The bones are great for their teeth.
Yes. And that's a great question I forgot to mention was, oftentimes people are asking me, well, if I feed wet food, what about their teeth? Because don't they need dry food to, you know, that crunching action to clean their teeth? And the answer is no. A lot of times, the dry food actually creates bacteria in the mouth because it is dry, so it gets wedged between their teeth. Their tongue is not as strong of a muscle as human tongues, so they can't get it out. And so when it's wedged between their teeth, it's actually breeding more bacteria, and so it actually creates more poor dental hygiene. And when you do switch to a raw, there's a lot of great digestive enzymes in it. Actually brings out an enzyme in their natural saliva called lysosome, which helps actually clean their teeth and break down the plaque as well. Yes.
This is a rescue that I got in January, and her back teeth were the color of her mouth here. And they're absolutely white now, and it's from chicken necks.
Yeah.
I give her a chicken neck or two a week.
Yeah, and we hear that all the time. You know, when you give your dog a bone, they're sitting there for hours and they're scraping at it and they're trying, their tongue's licking the marrow and they're kind of moving that great bacteria around in their mouth to kind of help break down all those bacteria that create dental hygiene problems. I myself had an animal too that it was a foster, and we took him to the vet, and they quoted me a $950 dental bill because the dog was 10 years old and had horrible teeth. Well, obviously it was a rescue, and I'm not filthy rich to spend $1,000 on their teeth. And so I started to do bones, and I did 2 bones, a 2-inch beef marrow bone twice a week. And a month later, we went back to the vet, and the vet, checked his teeth and said, "Oh, they look great for his age, And I said, "This is the same dog that you told me we needed to do that surgery and do extractions and all that stuff." And it really is a miracle. Yes.
Is it true that when they say, the crunchiness of your kibble break off the plastic arteries, really like, say, brushing our teeth with a hole in where it actually gets stuck.
I didn't hear all your questions. I couldn't hear all of it.
Is it true that, when people say that eating, your dry kibble to scrape off the plaque and tartar in your teeth is actually like saying us brushing our teeth with a bowl full of Cheerios or potato chips?
Pretty
It
much.
actually gets stuck, not breaks off plaque and tartar.
Ours all like move side to side too. We're chewing dogs down so they can't even like move their mouth around it.
Anything else?
We could do 20% off all bones today too. If you guys want to get some bones. Smallbatch does have some bones. I don't have them in stock right now, but they do have marrow bones and
Just beef marrow bones right now. Great for little dogs. All right, well thank you guys so much for your time.